This is crazy. It's frosted on the windshield in Texas. I should probably get out and scrape. All right, well, it finally warmed up a little bit. The sun has come out. It's a balmy 60, 61 degrees or so. So it's pretty nice. Today, we're looking at this stuff. This is carbonate. Yes, I actually do look at carbonates every so often. This is a heavily bioturbated carbonate, and it's part of this big cliff-forming facies behind me. It's kind of hard to see with the sun right now. I promise I'll get some better shots. But we're on the Guadalupe River right now. This is looking to the south. We're looking downstream. Back up that way is Canyon Lake Dam. That's the big dam that's been impounding Canyon Lake for the past few decades. And we're going to look at some of the Glen Rose Limestone today. And the Glen Rose is part of the Trinity group. And it's Albian. So it's an Albian rock, early Albian. And there's maybe a bit of an icehouse world happening at this time. So sea level might have been going up glacial eustatically. And as a bit of an introduction, in 2002, about 21 years ago, unfortunately, there was a huge flood out here. And this entire river really went up something like, I don't even know how many dozens of feet above normal flood. Unfortunately, it wiped out about 48,000 houses, killed maybe about a dozen people. And it created the Canyon Lake Gorge, which is pretty well renowned among a lot of geologists nowadays because it showed that a single flood can really gouge out a major canyon in the space of minutes to hours. It doesn't necessarily take hundreds of years or millennia like a lot of times we think. So uniformitarianism, not so much. You can get a lot going on in one big catastrophe. There are also some really nice dinosaur tracks over there in the Glen Rose Limestone showing that it is indeed an intertidal environment. So the limestone here varies from kind of shelfal to intertidal, where you have the dinosaur tracks. Obviously, it's pretty clearly intertidal. And there are things like theropods, maybe something like an acrocanthosaurus type creature. And there are things like sauropods, maybe like a Paluxysaurus or something. Interesting tidbit, those tracks in the Glen Rose Formation were discovered by Roland Bird back in the day in the 1920s or 30s. He excavated some of them, brought them back to the American Museum of Natural History. So they're Albian tracks, and they mounted them under some Jurassic dinosaurs in the American Museum of Natural History. So if you saw the old Brontosaurus, now it's Apatosaurus, and the old Allosaurus mount, they had those Glen Rose trackways under them in the nice limestone. I remember seeing them as a kid and thinking, wow, how'd they find the footprints of these very same skeletons? Well, they didn't. They actually are kind of fudging a little bit. But that's neither here nor there. We're going to look at some of the limestone today. We're going to look at some fractures. There's some interesting geomechanics going on, and there's even some modern neoichnology. So stick around. I'll show you some in a minute. We're in that bioturbated shelfal limestone, but there's a couple of other really interesting things happening here. First off, there's a series of fractures. If you're into geomechanics and fractures, this is a great place to see it right here on the Guadalupe. And these fractures are associated with the Balcones fault system, which runs roughly northeast to southwest through this area. That's why these cliffs are here. That's why the whole area is uplifted. The other thing that we've got going on, awesome thalassinoides burrows. I mean, this whole surface, it's literally just completely composed of thalassinoides. Classic T and Y-shaped structures. Little shrimp burrows, there's a nice one there. You can actually see some of the morphology on some of these. Just 100% churned. Here's a nice big one. Look at that one kind of curving. Pretty good sized shrimp living in that, maybe a worm or something. So this is a very vibrant carbonate environment. Look at all these little grooves all over the bottom here. This is kind of a cloudy, silty mud on the river bottom. You can see it's got a lot of organic debris, very fine grain, but it's all these little trails all over the place. They're a lot like those earthworm trails I showed in a different video, which would be classified as Gordia. These are kind of, some are straight, some are sinuous, they cross each other. If these have a V-shaped cross-section, they would be something called Archeonassa. If they have a U-shaped cross-section, they would be called Gordia. Doesn't really matter, because what these things tell you is that there's a very soft ground and there's a very flexible little animal. In this case, it's a snail, it's gastropods. And we're a little bit further up on the river here, and you can see these little dark shapes all over the bottom. This is one of those limestone shelves on the river that stick out. And I picked up a couple of these little guys, and here they are. It's our friends, the snails. These are the guys that are making the little Gordia or Archeonassa. Just little gastropods, little freshwater guys. Kind of cute. So the light is not really ideal for this, but you can still see there's several little bunches of cycles in this lower part of the Glen Rose, and then up there it's a little bit more massive looking, but there's still some cycles in there. And the whole succession is about 200 feet thick, or around 60 something meters thick. So you figure out each of those cycles is about a meter, maybe about 3 feet or so, and that's about right. You can see them there, you know, each one's about 3 feet thick. So I figure, hey, we're out here, we might as well look at one of these cycles, right? I mean, that's what we're here to do, is look at rocks. So let's take a look at one. So starting at the water, you know, about up to here, it's heavily bioturbated. You can see it's like just chewed. And then something changes, it's a little bit more resistant here. So it forms a little bit more of a ridge. You can see it forms an overhang. And, you know, from here to about here, it's about a meter, you know, give or take. Then there's a surface where it's kind of recessive again. That bioturbated interval and the more resistant cap again. This one, you know, not quite a meter, about a half meter. We're looking at averages here, right? Okay. Next one up, recessive, capped with resistant. That's a little thicker, 1.5 meters. So, you know, we're averaging out okay. It's not so bad. And so on and so forth up the cliffside. And you can see these things are nice and continuous. They go all the way down the river that way and then continue on this direction. So these things are probably parasequences. And if we go the glacial eustatic route, it makes sense that periodically you'd have kind of a rise in sea level and the carbonates build up to keep up with it. These might be the tidal flat type things that we find the dinosaur tracks, and they tend to be in the more resistant material. As you know, with carbonates, there's basically 3 modes of operation. There's catch up, where they try to catch up to sea level. There's keep up, where they stay at the same depth as sea level rises. And there's give up, which is when they're drowned. So sort of like with clastics, where you have, you know, transgression, regression, progradation, retrogradation, and so on. With carbonates, of course, it's different. They're trying to keep up with sea level, and they're doing it through growth. So what we might be seeing here is cycles of catch up or keep up, probably catch up, and then they get drowned again as sea level rises and the cycle starts all over again. Okay, so that's been our brief but meaningful visit to the Glen Rose Limestone here on the Guadalupe River in Texas, just south of the Canyon Lake Dam. If you're ever in Austin, if you're ever in Texas in the neighborhood, it's worth a trip out here to take a look at it. You can do free tours of the Dinosaur track site. You have to arrange them through the dam authority, but it's damn worth it. Take a look at those tracks, take a look at some rocks. I think you'll be glad you did. You'll see some cool geomechanics, you'll see some cool ichnology, some cool sedimentology. It's even a really important aquifer, the Trinity group. I haven't gotten into that in this, but hey, there's only so much time. So do yourself a favor, come out, take a look at the rocks. You'll be glad you did. Thanks for watching.